I just wanted some clarification on tithing.
And being enabled to forgive somebody who causes an offense
Does
towards
it really matter whether someone is Protestant or Catholic?
The genealogies are different from Matthew to Luke.
I was wondering what the Bible said in terms of what I should do.
This is Pastor's Perspective. We're here every Monday through Friday providing answers on a variety of topics, including the Bible, end times, other religions, and the family. Call right now with your question at 1-888-564-6173. That's 888-564-6173. You can also post your question at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
And I want to start by saying don't call in with your questions today, despite what you just heard Announcer Bill say, because today's program is not live on the radio on this Monday afternoon, but it is live on Facebook and YouTube on Thursday afternoon. So if you're watching us that way, you can call us and ask your questions, but everybody else, you're going to have to wait until tomorrow. And if you're on hold already, we'll get to you guys as soon as we can. Thank you so much for listening to Pastor's Perspective and for watching as well on facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective and on the KWAVE YouTube channel. KWAVE is our flagship station in Southern California, and we thank you all for watching, including Bobby Conway's mom and dad, who always watch us on YouTube. So hi there, Mr. and Mrs. Conway. Thank you so much for watching the program.
You should be proud of your son.
Yes. Author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway is here. He's actually in his home studio there in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the studio here with me is Ben Corson from Hope Generation. You can find out more about Ben at hopegeneration.com. How you guys doing? Ready to tackle some more questions?
Let's get after it.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Ben and Bobby here. So let us start with our calls. Daniel in California. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Wow. I didn't think I'd make it on. Man, you guys are spitting fire today. I really enjoyed that zeal.
No, we were spitting fire on Thursday. Today's Monday. We haven't spat any fire yet, but
God.
hint,
Okay.
hint. Yes. Okay, go
My
ahead.
bad. I get confused with all this stuff.
So do we.
I've been reading some church history, and I think his name is Eusebius or something.
Eusebius.
And he was Eusebius, and he was talking about a letter that Jesus had written to a king that was asking for healing, and it blew my mind. I was just like, wait, what? Jesus writes letters to people, and I just wanted to get your take on how credible is he as a church historian. He's one of the earliest ones, I believe, or the first one. And I don't know, just what are some ideas or thoughts around that that letter that Jesus wrote?
Yeah, Bobby, simple answer. What would you say to Daniel?
Well, I think you might be referring to the Abgar legend. And this particular legend would say that Jesus exchanged some letters between a particular king, Abgar. And Eusebius is the first to report of this, but he's not the first and the earliest. This is in the 4th century. And so we don't know anything about this kind of a letter exchange. And so the common understanding amongst Christian scholarship is that we don't know of anything that Jesus wrote. Now, obviously, he didn't write anything in the Bible. Now, I know that there would be somebody who want to super spiritualize and go, oh, well, he gave us the whole Testament because he's got, I get that. I'm not saying that. But I would also say that maybe he did write some stuff, but we're just not aware of it, and stuff is lost. But this right here is known to be a legend, hence the Abgar legend.
Daniel, does that help you?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Sure thing. Thanks for calling us. Ben, anything to add to that? Or you?
Abgar V, legend. Eusebius is the first known person to talk about it in the 4th century. So, Bobby, I agree with you.
Awesome. All right. And Joseph in Virginia, we'll go to you now. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
For having me on. My question is, what do you think of the nuclear rapture theory?
Okay, first of all, have you guys heard of the nuclear rapture theory?
No,
Ben?
I'm assuming, is it referring to the Hiroshima, Nagasaki, like dropping a nuclear bomb, and that sort of nuclear winter is attributed to the tribulation? I have no idea. I've never heard this until today.
Yeah, what about you, Bobby? No. So, okay, sorry, Joseph, I guess we can't help you today.
well, let me explain to you, and that way you can answer my explanation.
Well, just can you give us like the 1 minute apologist version?
Yes, yes,
okay.
yes. The idea is, it says in 1 Corinthians that we will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. That's a rapture. Now, if it's a nuclear rapture, the idea is that we would not leave corpses that sleep, figuratively, because the heat of the fireballs would vaporize the body, and that would explain why we do not all sleep. And
That's
so,
pretty interesting, actually.
What?
Well, I was just saying, I've never heard that before, but whoever invented that idea is pretty clever. I mean, this is it. I find this kind of stuff interesting.
Let me say one more thing. It says in the Bible, we will go from physical to spiritual instantly. Well, the nuclear fireballs, they would be instant as far as the change. And let me see, there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh, yeah, this would apply only to the area around ground zero. You know, they have to be real close to ground zero for the vaporization to be complete. Now, further away from ground zero, there would be corpses. And in Luke 17, it does mention at the same time, you know, the day of the Lord, not the day of the Lord, but the day of the Son of Man, which is actually the same thing as the rapture. There will be corpses. It says, where the corpses are, there will the vultures be gathered. So there would be two separate things. The place or the area where there would be no bodies because of the heat, and then the other part would be further away from ground zero, and there would be bodies because the heat would not be enough to vaporize.
Right. Yeah, some interesting thoughts there. Bobby, what would you say?
You know, I guess I'm finding myself, and maybe Ben should step in on this, because I'm not really understanding what he's saying. That the rapture of Jesus is going to cause some nuclear type of heat. Like, what would make us assume that in the rapture, I guess, would be my question.
Aren't you talking about a political nuclear strike that atomizes people? You're saying that could be an interpretation of the rapture in the nuclear rapture theological view and perspective. Is that what you're saying, Joseph?
Okay, then that makes sense.
Yes, the idea is that the rapture occurs when Russia bombs America, and so the rapture will be limited to where the killing is.
All right.
Well, just one thought about this, because I don't feel like I have the sort of exousia or authority or credibility to speak into this eschatological thing. I will say that this reminds me of a sort of an inverted, like how the early church, the early Christian fathers like Chrysostom and Origen and Eusebius, when you read their commentaries, they would like allegorize things, and like Jesus caused the disciples to catch 153 fish because there's 153 different kinds of races or ethnicities in the world. So that's a metaphor for all tribes and tongues. Now, I actually find that kind of stuff interesting. I think it's fun to sort of study. It doesn't mean that I think that's the literal interpretation of it. But then again, in Jewish consciousness, they believe that the Old Testament was like a gem that you would turn and see it in so many different lights. Like, there's one book that was written by a rabbinic author, essentially, who talked about all the different ways, like something like 12 or 24, I can't remember the exact number, of different ways you can just interpret one story of Jacob. So there's so many different ways to view that. And that kind of seems to me like a scientific allegorization of the 21st century version of what the early Christian fathers were doing, but using science to interpret we shall not all sleep. And I think it's interesting. I've never heard it before. This is the first time it's ever come to me.
Joseph, thanks for your phone call from Virginia today on the Pastor's Perspective program. Bobby, Conway, and Ben Corson answering your questions. My name is Brian Perez, and let's come back to California to talk to Maggie. Hi there, Maggie. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate the program, and I thank you for taking my call. And what I want to know is how to explain to a non-believer why it's okay to kill in the context of war, or what God used to tell the Israelites to do, versus not okay to murder according to the Ten Commandments.
All right. So what's the short way to answer that question? What would you say, Bobby?
There is a difference between killing and murdering. Obviously, there are self-defense moments where you might take a life, but that's not murder. Murder is proactively going after somebody to take their life, and it's rooted in a motive to bring justice about, or to pay back, or to get revenge. As Confucius said, whenever you set out for revenge, dig 2 graves. So murder, I would say, and I can imagine people going, oh, he just quoted Confucius, right? All truth is God's truth. I'm not a Confucianist, okay? So just want to clarify for our Christians that get weird about that stuff, okay? Now, I will say that murder is different. So think about the animal kingdom. Let's say a lion kills a zebra and it eats it. Well, the lion killed the zebra, but it didn't murder the zebra. So there's clearly a difference. So if we're self-protecting ourselves, or if we're self-protecting our country, so sometimes you might have to bear arms and kill, maybe in self-defense. Now, that's a debated issue. If somebody's a pacifist on an individual level, then they might not agree with that. And I would say that there's a lot of godly people that would hold to that position. But the person that would be feeling like they have the right to protect themselves. Like, for example, I would just say, if somebody broke into my house and was going to kill my wife and kids, and I had an opportunity to take that person's life, I wouldn't look at that as murder. I would see that as defending my wife and kids, and I would do that in a second.
Maggie, what do you think of that?
I think it's great. I don't really understand how to explain to her why God would tell, his people to kill certain other nations, or, go to battle with them.
Ben?
Okay, can I take a second? I don't know how to do the super short version.
That's fine.
I'm going to unpack this one. I like how you're keeping it kinetic, though. I think it's good. We were just talking about that off the air. Like, it's good to keep it moving. But I don't know how I'm going to do this because I think a lot about this. So I'll try to synthesize it.
But if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I struggle with this, Maggie. I'm going to kind of be transparent and vulnerable for a minute, because one of my best friends is a Navy SEAL. Two of some of my friends, and we've talked about this. Like, I'm like, how would I go into the SEALs? Because I don't want to kill anybody, but I love the ethos. I love everything about it. I just don't like killing people. And the reason I'm a vegetarian is because of the Chronicles of Narnia. I anthropomorphize animals, and I don't want to kill animals over ethical purposes. So my friends make fun of me all the time for this, but it's just how it is. So I just read a book by Leo Tolstoy, who believed that you should never perform violence for any reason. One could make, and Bobby, I noticed that you put in that little aside. You said very godly people hold to the view. One could easily make the argument that Jesus was a pacifist. But then again, it's like he's pulling out the Second Amendment when he's like, do you have swords? Pull out your swords. 2 is great. You know what I mean? It's like, I love how you can't put Jesus in a box, is what I'm getting at. So, Maggie, I just want to let you know, like, I definitely struggle with this issue. The classic argument is that God did not say, do not murder in the 10 Commandments. Pardon me, he did not say, do not kill in the 10 Commandments. He said, do not murder. But honestly, Maggie, there are those who would make the argument that Jesus embodied and personified the idea of no aggression at all. One could make that argument that weak is the new strong, that the myth of redemptive violence is exposed, is what it's been called. Bobby, can you speak into that? Because it's not an easy topic, but it's important.
Yeah. I do think this is a secondary issue. We got to be respectful for people's conscience.
Yeah.
There would have been a time when I was younger, even on my ethical approach, that I would have thought, you can't ever, tell a lie like in a Hagar sense. And I thought, man, she was wrong for that or whatever.
Kant's categorical imperative.
Categorical imperative, yeah. It applies always. And I look at that differently now. I mean, she is somebody I think that was committed for her faith. I do think we would have a hard time making Jesus a pacifist when we think of Jesus in the book of Revelation coming on his white horse to conquer. So I think you're accurate, though, as far as his picture during his earthly ministry.
Well, can I interject something there, Bobby? And
sure.
I want to ask you about the Revelation thing. I just finished a book about Revelation, reading it. And one could argue that the whole white horse thing, when it says that his garment was stained in blood in Revelation, one author argued that it was his own blood, and that the sword coming out of his mouth was not a literal sword, as in it's an allegory. It's apocalyptic literature of the sword. The word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword. The sword of the Spirit is the word of God. So it's his word, right? So one could make the argument, depending on the apocalyptic literature interpretive approach of the eschatology of Revelation, or in the pictorial imagery of, is Revelation portraying Jesus in that way? Or like, are we mistaking some of those apocalyptic images? Does that make sense? Like a literal sword versus the word of God.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say I concede that point. Well, then we still have the fact that he's the second person of the Godhead. And so he's one in nature with the Spirit and with the Father. And then when you think about the angel of the Lord, if Jesus is, the angel of the Lord, if you equate that, then what about the 185,000 Assyrians? So you see the angel of the Lord.
Counterpoint. Here we go. We're going on it. Brian, I think this stuff is good
Yes,
good
go,
radio.
go.
Counterpoint. The argument can be made that like the death angel in Exodus was the unleashing of a dark force as opposed to an angel of light. For example,
right.
like when angels do those sort of things, and in the story, God gives victory to the Israelites. It could be that that sort of one could argue in the Christian tradition imagery of a fallen angel sort of figure. What's your response to that? Because there is that interpretation.
Well, let's just say I concede that. Then I would be thinking about where the Bible says that, I'm the giver of life and I kill. And so if Jesus is God, one in nature with God, what we have is the second person of the Trinity revealed in the incarnation, but you still can't put Jesus at odds with the Yahweh, because he is Yahweh of the Old Testament. And so you'd have to completely eliminate.
Okay, I'm coming back. Let's keep going. I'm a big believer. The Lex Talionis, the oldest law in history. Bobby, I love this stuff.
Yeah.
The Lex Talionis, oldest law in history, law of Hammurabi, eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Eye for eye.
Jesus said, you've heard it said. He wasn't quoting Confucius or, you know what I mean, some extra Tolstoy or some extra biblical source. He was quoting the Bible of the Old Testament. He said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, resist not your enemy. Turn the other cheek, quoting Lamentations. Give your cheek to the smiter. And so what I'm saying is Jesus, it seemed like he was into progressive revelation in that moment, wherein he's saying, like, that's how you used to understand it. I don't know if I'm using the correct theological term, but you used to understand it that way. But now you're ready. You're in a new sort of phase of spiral dynamics. You're ready for this next phase. And the next phase is resist not an evil person, because that was a mercy law back then. Back then, if somebody took your eye, I would kill your whole tribe. You know what I mean? So it was a mercy law. What would you say back to that?
Well, I'd say, let's suppose that I give you that point and I concede there. Then I would want to be able to say, maybe so. Under a theocracy, you could have that. And by the way, I'm open to be an influence. I'm just kind of like for Ben and for our audience, letting them see two people think through a biblical problem. But I would come to the book of Revelation and say, okay, you still have to deal with the 7 seals, the 7 bowls, and the 7 trumpets as being something brought about by God that's going to cause a lot of problems. And so if we want to get Jesus off the hook as being the white horse conqueror, you still got God, who seems to be the one ultimately bringing people to justice.
Yeah. What about when in the Old Testament, when God tells
And I think that's what she's
Israelites,
asking.
yeah, go ahead, go over there and wipe them out completely?
Well, that's the divine command, Joshua. That's a whole other thing that I have many thoughts on.
Let's hear them.
I do too. I am diplomatically not going to share, because I really have thought through this a lot and done a lot of just research into these kind of theological conundrums. But I think if I go into it now, it'll be a very, very, very long.
How about just one? How about just one? One thought. One thought.
Okay. Let me pose a question, so I don't want to come across as heretical. You know what I mean? Like, let me just posit something. Bobby, do you think it is possible that I'm saying, is it possible? I'm like asking this question. Imagine I'm a caller in, right? Not like making a statement, but and I want to be careful in how I want to be strategic in how I communicate this. But with the idea of progressive revelation, do you think there are cases in the Old Testament where these biblical characters are doing their best at that time to be capable of understanding God? And he met them. I love spiral dynamics, which is different phases of consciousness in human history. I want to go into all this spiral dynamic stuff, but I don't have time. But basically, the idea is that is as far as they were able to go spiritually at that time, because they were still developing. So by the time Jesus came onto the scene, he was sort of breaking the wall to get them to the next phase, to a new spiritual understanding, when he said, "You've heard it said, kill people, but you've heard it said, a life for a life, but I say to you, turn the other cheek." It's like Jesus was pushing them forward into what God's heart really is, because through the progressive revelation of the Old Testament, they were understanding God the best that they knew how at that time. And as time went on, their understanding got more developed. I wonder, is that a possibility, Bobby, to you, or would that be considered heretical by orthodoxy in Christendom? I mean, what's your thought about that? Because I'm just positing, throwing on the table a question.
I don't have a problem with progressive revelation. I think it's obviously something that we see. I have a problem with it, though, when it relates to jettisoning one of God's attributes like justice. So, for example, in the will, you take Ananias and Sapphira. They dropped dead because they lied to who? The Holy Spirit. You take the sons of Eli. You take the people who were swallowed up in the wilderness. Clearly, that was not human. When they're swallowed up in the wilderness, that was God doing that. Now, I get that that's under a theocracy. And I'm thankful that we're call it a dispensation of grace that we're in. But in the eschaton, with the 7 seals, the 7 bowls, the 7 trumpets, I think that we're going to see some of that kind of people being brought to judgment at that time. So when I think about God's justice, here's what I love, Ben. I love your heart for life. I love your heart for peace. I love your heart for nonviolence. My heart shares all of that. I struggle when I read the Bible and see some of the passages in the Old Testament. Like, for example, when they were going in to take out the Canaanites in the land under Joshua's leadership, God is the one who clearly is saying, you're a weak people. You can't pull this off. These people are tall and mighty. In other words, I'm going to fight this war for you. Like when walls come down because you blow a trumpet, that's not because of the sound of the trumpet. That's because God did a miracle and people were brought to judgment. But even in that, God waited some 400 years while people's iniquity would grow to its full capacity. So I think the case that I would make, Ben, is yes, God is so gracious and just with even the Canaanites. Like, it's not like they just went in there. These people were boiling their children in milk, sacrificing their children. And so I think that we need to realize that God was just in what he was doing. He was patient. He was long suffering. But when it happens, we can always say, that God warned us adequately. The thing that I'd want to be careful of is disconnecting this idea of justice. Now, the original question is when can we take up arms? I don't think we're living in a time like, we need to be careful. I think we can debate whether or not we're to be pacifists much more today than you could under a theocracy, and if that's where you land, I respect that. But I can make a case for non-pacifism as well as for pacifism, and we can debate that.
And Brian, just to tie the bow here, I think, Bobby, I hope this is helpful for people, because me and you come at it from a different angle. Like we don't on this sub point, we interpret some of these passages in different ways, and because of that, I think this is a good example of people watching. When, like, I remember, like, the tithe issue, watching you and Brian go back and forth on the tithe issue. I think it's really good that I hope we can model that you don't have to major in the minors, that you can come at it from different theological perspectives and interpretations and do it in almost a fun way. Like, to me, I think sometimes people argue, and to me, I'm like, this is fun. I could do this all. This subject, yes. We could continue to talk about it, and I have so many more thoughts about it. But I think that where you landed is great. You're like, but you can see how people make a case for pacifism, even if at this moment that's not exactly where you land. Even if you have a more holy, just war, maybe bent toward, not maybe that's too extreme, but you get what I'm saying. Like Augustine, I think it was him who argued for the just war
theory.
Yeah, just war theory. So I think maybe this is a good example that people can, take from that you can see some of these sub points differently, and it's really okay. It's really okay.
Yeah. The thing I just would want to say, and number one, I just want to commend, Brian Perez for being such a great host on this show. Yeah. It is funny because Brian wants to get all these questions answered, which is wonderful. Yes. But then he kind of is like, this is an interesting conversation. I think probably where Brian's being really gracious, Ben, is he's enjoying that we're in a debate and he understands the value of how healthy that is.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it is healthy. I would also want our listeners to get this, number one, I don't feel attacked at all by this. Like, I think we have to learn from one another. But I would say, I hope our listeners can appreciate why it's important not to come to conclusions really quick. There's a lot to this stuff, and it takes a lot of years and a lot of thinking.
Bobby, we only scratched the surface,
we're just scratching it. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to Maggie and see what she thinks of our conversation. Hi, Maggie. You still with us?
Oh, yeah. I'm
good.
There. You kind of made my head explode, but I think I can at least make a stab at talking about this with her. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and we always archive all of our programs on Facebook and YouTube and Spotify, so you can always just share the program with your friend. This will be the episode, probably it'll be labeled July 19th, because that's when it'll be on the radio. So you might want to look for that, or just study it yourself. Take notes of everything that was said. But thanks for calling us today, Maggie.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
All right. God bless you. Thanks
you
for listening in California. This is Pastor's Perspective. I'm Brian Perez here with Bobby Conway and Dr. Bobby Conway. Lots more great questions coming up, like Mary and Sonia. We'll get to you guys as soon as we can. And really quick, let me tell you about Bobby's website. It's oneminuteapologist.com. Bobby also has a YouTube channel called 1 Minute Apologist. You can go there and watch like 1,200 videos with a bunch of information on different topics. Check that out when you can. And Ben Corson is here as well. You can find out more about him at bencorson.com. He's the host of the radio and television program called Hope Generation. Perhaps you've seen him on Good Morning America or the Ryan Reese Show or several of the Hallmark Channel. Is that the one?
The
other
Hallmark
one you were
Channel.
on?
Yeah, I only went on there once, but it was fun.
Oh, cool.
That show doesn't exist anymore that I was on, sadly.
Oh, okay.
And there was like a low-key, people were sad that show's not there anymore. But yeah, it's called Home and Family.
Very cool. So I'm sure it's still archived maybe
on
your website,
YouTube.
on your YouTube?
Yeah, if you just type in Hope Generation Hallmark Channel.
Cool. Okay. So we'll be back with more of your questions in just a little bit. We're not live today, but we will be live tomorrow. So if you've got any questions, give us a call. Hold on to them until tomorrow and then call us with those questions. The number is 888-564-6173, but don't call us right now because, like I said, we're not live. But Mary Mary and Sonia and everybody else on hold. We'll get to you guys as soon as we can. This is the Pastor's Perspective program, and also don't forget we archive all of our programs. I think I already said that, but I just want to hit the point home again that you can find our archives on Facebook and YouTube. Just do a search for Pastor's Perspective. All right, we'll be back in just a little bit here on Pastor's Perspective. Stand by.
Pastor's Perspective continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pastor's Perspective continues. And now, here's today's host, Brian Perez.
Hey there. Thank you so much for listening and for watching the Pastor's Perspective program. We are ready to answer more Bible questions. In the studio with me today, Ben Corson from the Hope Generation TV and radio program. And on the Bobby Cam, it's author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. And let's go back to the phones. Here is Mary. Thank you for listening, Mary. Thanks for calling. How can we help you?
Hi, I just want to say I appreciate you guys so much. I listen to you all the time and just get a lot out of your shows and all the things that you teach us, and so I appreciate you. I was calling because on Thursday, I don't remember if it was Ben or Bobby that was talking about how pornography, when people are into pornography, it changes the brain.
That was Bobby.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm a single mom. My son got into pornography. He got exposed to it when he was probably 10 years old. And I know it's something that he's looked at over the years, and I've tried to address it, and sometimes I did it wrong. And now it's hard because he's an adult, and he lives with me, but he rents a room from me. And being a woman and him being a man, it's like not something I don't know for sure. I suspect he's still participating and watching it.
Yeah. Bobby, what would you tell Mary? What advice would you give her on how, as a single mom, she can talk about such a sensitive topic like pornography with her adult son?
Wow. That's an awkward conversation right there, for sure. But I would say if he's living under your roof, you would, obviously have the right to certain expectations about what can go on in your home. And I think you could maybe talk about, it can be an embarrassing conversation anytime you get into intimacy stuff with a parent and a child. So I think just being aware of that, but it'd be embarrassing for you as well. I think it could just be, in a casual conversation, just want you to know, as your mom, I'm praying for you. I know when you were younger, you really struggled with some of this. And I know since you're not married and being a guy, I'm praying for you to find a spouse someday, or in hope that you're doing okay from all the stuff you had to see when you were younger, and then see what maybe he would say in light of that. And then if that opened up the door, yeah, Mom, I'm really struggling here, be tender, try not to shame him. And if it's a real struggle, then just try to say, just want you to know that there's anything I can do to help you. I want to do that. And then I think it's fair to say I really would respect if you could do your best to keep this house a sanctuary unto the Lord. And I know that is a tough ask, but that's probably the way that I would approach it. And I'd also want to know about the temperament of a child. And I would maybe even be open to, like if it was me, I would maybe even leverage another relationship to kind of feel something out there. But I would say at the end of the day, it's probably not an issue if he wasn't living with you that you want to be discussing with him as a mother to a son. You'd rather have some men in his life that would have that conversation.
Yeah. Are there men in your life that can talk to him? Maybe an uncle or anybody like that?
That's what's really, really hard. I don't really know of any. Well, there's one godly man who used to be one of his teachers who he respects, but he doesn't really get a chance to talk to him. I actually just ran into him the other day, and he was asking about my son, and I told my son, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to see him." So maybe that'll be something the Lord uses. I don't know. But my son's not walking with the Lord. None of my kids are since their dad left. So. Oh, wow. I pray, and I know that's the most powerful thing I can do, but I didn't know maybe there was something I could read to learn more about it. Maybe it would help me to know better how to pray. Mm-hmm. I like what was the book, Ben? Flirting with Darkness. Is that your book? Did it have a section in there you were saying?
Well, I don't have a section in there about this topic, but Mary, I will say just two things that come to mind. Well, three things. Number one, I don't really have authority to talk about parenting because I'm not a parent. So I want to say that as a prefatory remark. Number two, I want to just add that the orbitofrontal cortex takes time to develop in young people. And so that's the part of the brain that weighs the consequences of actions before we undertake those decisions. So it says when you raise up a child in the way that he should go, when he's old, he will not depart. It doesn't say we won't make stupid decisions when we're young. We all have made stupid decisions when we're young. But in the end, when we're old, we have a tendency to come back home. Well, how do we come home? This is the third thought. The kindness of God draws people to repentance or to teshuva or to metanoia, which means to come home. So Mary, I think that your kindness and the loving spirit that you have could very well be instrumental in leading him home in this area of his life as well. Bobby?
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add, if you mention that he's not walking with the Lord, then I would say that should be the big focus, just praying for his relationship with Christ, because Jesus says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. Like the reason that we struggle with obedience is because we don't love God. Every time I sin, it just reveals my struggle to love him more fully. And so I would say by keeping the focus on his relationship with Christ and praying in that way, but you have to be careful too, because you don't want to be the mom that ends up nagging him into the kingdom, so to speak. Sometimes we just have to let our kids have a little space to figure life out on their own, and that can be the hardest thing. And I'd say all the best to you. So Lord, be with our caller's son. I pray that you would please help him to turn to you and fill him with your Spirit, and just use his wonderful mother to be a friend to him and to be a prayer warrior. And I pray that you just comfort Mary and let her know that you are with her. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Mary, you asked for some book recommendations. One thing that I thought of is Focus on the Family. They've got a lot of resources. You might check out their website, focusonthefamily.com, or give them a phone call and just explain to them your situation, and they might be able to offer products or books or something that they have available. So check out focusonthefamily.com. All right, next we're going to go to Sonia in California. Hi there, Sonia. What say you?
Hi, pastors. First time calling. I just want to let you guys know you guys are amazing.
First time caller. What took you so long to call us, Sonia?
I know, right? You guys have such an amazing show, so I just like listening. That's why I haven't called.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's great.
I wanted to ask, what do you say to rebuke demons, and should we say anything, or should we say anything to rebuke demons?
Like, is there a particular formula? Is there a particular prayer we're supposed to say? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like, is there something like, a particular prayer or like saying?
Okay, well, Ben, we'll start with you.
It's interesting how the same word for rebuke that Jesus used in the storm was the same word rebuke that he used when casting out demons and in the story. So I think that's very powerful that this quote unquote Satan caused storms, or I would put it another way, like the forces of darkness that are propelling forward tragedy, travesty in our life. The Lord has a way of rebuking this from our lives. Now, I've had a friend who really helped me by rebuking evil spirits who were attacking me. And I think of how in the book of Jude that it said that Michael the archangel, he did not bring a railing accusation against the devil when fighting over the body of Moses. He just said, "The Lord rebuke you." So I think that it's cool that the keys were handed to Peter in that we have the power to rebuke the forces of darkness, but at the same time, that ultimate authority is given back to the Lord. So if we focus more on his ability to rebuke, then I think when that comes through us, it's more powerful. That was a little too mystical. So Bob, you want to make it more practical than that?
No, I thought it was a great answer.
Well,
really? Wow.
What did Sonia think?
I did.
Yeah, it was a good answer. I guess pretty much just use that word rebuke. I just was wondering because, like, Pastor Brian was saying over the weekend how, like, demons could be, like, just, like, with everybody's body, kind of like what you're saying too, Ben. So, like, here in my city, some people, like, there's prostitution, and I know there's some, like, in other cities. I think Pastor Brian was also talking about that. So, like, as I'm, like, driving and, like, wanting to say a prayer, and I want to, like, help clean my city, I want to be like, God, rebuke any bad spirits. Like, is that okay to say? Like, that's pretty much my question as well.
Bobby, what do you think? I just did your job real quick.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I sounded like Brian.
In a vulnerable moment, this gets hard for me sometimes, the unseen realm, because sometimes if I'm just being honest, like, we do get a lot of calls around demons, and sometimes I'm just not sure where the demon's at. Like, it's difficult. Like, I believe in the unseen realm, and I believe in spiritual warfare, and I've experienced it. I think sometimes people are finding a demon behind every bush, and I almost find it curious sometimes. Like, I'm not saying that you're even remotely hinting at this with your question that you're bringing up, Sonia, but I would say sometimes when callers call, it seems like they've got, like, this real clear picture of what kind of demon it is, how many demons there are, how often the demons are there. And, it just doesn't work that way for me. And I can just sense the power of darkness, but I don't always know if it's a demon or demons or what's going on there. So I think that it's always just best to pray to the Lord. Lord, will you just deal with the darkness that I'm
That's
experiencing? And just go to him, because otherwise, if we feel like we're the ones in a position to start assigning and diagnosing, this person has a demon and this person doesn't have a demon and a demon's after me, like, do you really know that a demon's after you? I mean, honestly, I don't think anybody could know for certain that there's 4 demons after them or 2 demons after them. And I think we can get a little weird here. But I also want to be cautious that I don't sound like I'm a methodological naturalist, that I've just thrown out the unseen realm, because I'm not there. I really believe in it. But I just want to say something like, Lord, I am so ignorant of what's going on in this world that I can see, let alone in a world that I can't see. So would you please take care of some of the problems that I'm feeling and some of the anxiousness? And if there's demonic spirits here, please comfort me, Lord. If I'm just tripping out, please just comfort me, Lord. Help me to glorify you. I just think that simplifies it for me.
Yeah. Ben, any thoughts?
I have no more thoughts, Bobby. Thank you for sharing that. I've always given this technical definition over the last year or so, that I believe there are psycho-spiritual, transrational forces playing on the battlefield of our neurobiochemistry. That's sort of like a pedantic definition that I have. When people say, is it chemicals or is it evil spirits? And I say, there's a spirit realm that plays on the chemicals in our brain. That's how I look at it.
That's a good point.
Because even if you're an atheist listening, you have to say, I may have a point from this perspective. You might have to concede, but then again, I'm the one who has the microphone in this situation, not the person listening. So it's kind of an unfair advantage in this case. But the reason I think I have a point here is because philosophy says the hard problem. What's the hard problem of philosophy? Consciousness. No one knows where thoughts come from. We can see what's happening in the brain, but where does consciousness emerge? So much so that there's even an argument that consciousness doesn't exist. So I think that there is already a spiritual component just in the hard problem of philosophy, which goes back to your question about, rebuking demons, and Bobby, what you're talking about, methodological naturalism as juxtaposed against seeing a devil behind every corner. I really do kind of amalgamate the spirit realm and neurobiology.
All right, Sonia, what do you think?
Yes, that was a great answer, and I value your guys' perspective. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for calling, and don't wait so long to call us next time. We love hearing from you guys here on Pastor's Perspective.
Great question.
Yep. My name is Brian Perez, here with Bobby Conway and Dr. Bobby Conway and Ben Corson. He's kind of like a doctor because he knows so much.
Of course.
He should be a doctor.
That's right.
You guys need to have Dr. Ben Carson.
Yeah, we always confuse the two.
No.
Yep.
What we need to do is we just need to give Ben an honorary doctorate at Pastor's Perspective, right?
So does that give me the official title of doctor?
Why don't we start Pastor's Perspective University?
Yes, sir.
And then we can just
we're right
out all
above
these-
Vanguard, so we're halfway there.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's go to Patsy in California. Welcome to the program.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
I'm going to try to sound younger than I have in the past. My question is, I think even on Pastor's Perspective, there was a program recently about gossip and hurting other people with gossip. And, you know your scriptures well, but 1 Peter 4:8, and above all things have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover a multitude of sins. And then Proverbs 11:13, a gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. And my question is, my own experiences in the realm of Time's Up, Me Too, Catholic Church revelations, I have a hard time sorting that out.
The difference between gossiping
and anyone, but I don't want to give anyone opportunity for covering those, horrid sins.
Right. So where do we draw the line? Ben, what do you say?
Patsy, that's really good. I really believe in Billy Graham's Modesto Manifesto model that he would never publicly speak ill of a church. And that played really well for him. And I think if you make it your life goal to not destroy reputations, I think of how Proverbs says a good name is to be desired more than rubies and gold, then it's going to bless you, Patsy. I really do. That being said, I think that there are places for counsel. I have a counselor. I have been very open about how much therapy has helped me. I have a therapist who loves the Lord, who's very much helped me. And I'll share things of what I'm going through, or, what's been done to me or whatever. And that's very much helped me. But the intention is not to go slander people. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. My goal is to protect people's reputations. And I think that it's very important that love covers a multitude of sins, and that there are friends who, quote unquote, keep a secret and that are trustworthy. So I think if the intention is, hey, I love how it says rumors are like tasty delicacies in Proverbs. Like they're like carbohydrates. They're good for 20 minutes and then all benefits dissipate after that. I think when people are they're like obsessed with gossip. They're obsessed with it, and that's not the move. I think, Patsy, just hearing your heart is you want to protect people, you want to love people, you want to rebuke in private. And I think that goes a lot further than just seeking to slander. In fact, the very word adversary, or the devil, can mean a slanderer. And we don't want to be part of that work, of slandering. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there are places to be able to share in confidence in a way that we can get counsel without ever gossiping, slandering, or destroying a reputation and causing it to spread like the telephone game. What would you guys say?
Yeah, and I would ask too, when it's a really egregious sin that we're talking about, where you need to get authorities involved or whatever. Right. If somebody committed a murder, let's just use the most hyperbolic example. Then of course you have to go to the authorities. But I'm talking about, I think in our culture, somebody told me the other day, we live in such an unkind culture, and so I think that really, when it comes to this stuff, I think of everyday kind of gossip and that kind of thing. Kindness wins the day and love never fails. Bobby, what would you say?
I do think there's not a formula that we can give when it comes to knowing when we've crossed that line. We tend to know it. So I think that it's something where people need to be aware. Am I crossing a line here? And I think that that's a lot of just personal intuitiveness. Now, if people are in the habit of gossip, then they might be totally blind to the fact that they're gossiping. I do think probably Patsy's burden, because she mentioned the Catholic Church, there's a lot of cover-up that goes on. And I think that as it relates to, if somebody came to me for counseling, you're trained in counseling courses and stuff when you're taking those in Bible college and in seminary, that if somebody comes to you, there are some things you just can't keep confidential. Like if somebody says, I'm going to go kill somebody, and maybe the technical thing, I'm going to go murder somebody, right? Or if somebody says, I'm going to take my own life, you try to intervene because you're trying to help. So it's not that you're gossiping, you're just trying to help something tragic from happening. If somebody, I think that the Matthew 18 kind of go to the person one-on-one, but if somebody is caught in pedophilia, I don't think that's not gossip if we go and share that. Rather, we need to expose that because we're trying to protect other people from the pedophile. So it really does require a lot of situational wisdom as it relates to what we're talking about here.
You mentioned suicide, Bobby, and if somebody were to come to you confidentially and say, hey, I'm having suicidal thoughts, whatever, you might want to help that person along. You might want to get them counseling, et cetera. Where it becomes gossip now is if you start telling people that can't fix the problem at all. Hey, did you know that so-and-so has been wanting to take their life? But they've got some real problems here. And that's where it's not good, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say, as in the case of a pedophile, they are to be reported, and it's going to go on record. And it might look like gossip, but every parent or even in neighborhoods, I mean, that's a tough thought, but I understand it. Like you are entitled to know if there's pedophiles living in your neighborhood as parents to protect your kids. So I guess some could say that seems like a little bit of gossip, that you're sharing that. And I could imagine that would be horrible. Like if somebody's a pedophile, I can imagine that would be difficult. But there are some sins that have such great consequences to people that the community comes together in order to protect. So that's just one layer here. And when we talk about gossip, I think that the kind of gossip where Ben was just really bringing out some, like the tender morsels and carbohydrates, we see this stuff happening way too much. And this could just be running like what Ben said, man, we need to protect people's reputations. I mean, honestly, the truth is, our character's before the Lord, but we can hurt people's reputations. And sadly, it's usually insecure people that are the worst gossips, and they find their sense of security not in their identity in Christ, but rather in putting other people's identity down to feel better about their poor image of themselves.
Patsy, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more from Facebook. Actually, two more, because Jennifer sent in two questions. Number one, can manipulation be used in a just and positive way? And was Queen Esther manipulative? Have you guys ever thought of that?
That was fantastic. But how long do we have?
Take it.
But literally
like a minute. Yeah, I don't know.
We have like a minute
Go
left.
for it,
90
Ben.
seconds.
Have fun.
The unjust steward manipulated people into giving him a job by being cunning and crafty and borderline business unethical. And Jesus praised him, not his character, but his strategy. And he said the children of the world are more wise in this stuff, finances, than the children of light. So I'm just saying, I just think that the language is important. That's actually not manipulation. That's called being wise as a serpent without having a serpent's character. So I would just change the wording on that.
Okay.
When's it become manipulation then? That's like the gossip thing, right?
I think when you have I think manipulation is when you have watch this. Esther, the unjust steward wanted a job, and Esther was trying to save the Jewish people from Haman. They both had a good motive.
Yeah. When's the motive bad?
I don't know. Maybe the unjust steward, that's actually kind of debatable. But I think manipulation is when you're trying to do something to bend somebody according to your will, to mold them into your own image, rather than unfold them into God's image.
See, I think that improper manipulation is when Ben's trying to get me to be a pacifist. And we need to
Guilty as charged. Oh my goodness.
Another great program today on Pastor's Perspective. That is all the time we have. Jennifer, thanks for sending in your question on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. We'll be here live tomorrow, and we'll see Ben next week. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the program and for watching as well on Facebook and YouTube. And we'll take your calls tomorrow at 888-564-6173. God bless you all, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We trust you've been blessed and had your question answered. Join us Monday through Friday and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California.